statement, then he's going to take some questions from reporters. I want to listen.
Well, good evening, and excuse me. Thank you all very, very much for your patience. And I want to start by expressing an enormous thank you, merci, danke, to the people and the government of Switzerland for their incredible generosity. The way in which they have welcomed us and the amount of effort is really extraordinary, and we're very, very grateful to them. And throughout this entire process, certainly over the past week, the people of Switzerland have gone above and beyond in order to facilitate these negotiations, and I don't think that anybody could imagine a much more peaceful setting in order to pursue a peaceful path forward. On vous remercie tous en Suisse. I also want to thank the very many other nations that have provided a home for these negotiations over the past couple of years. People forget that. It's been going on that long. And that includes Austria, which was incredibly generous in hosting our delegation in Vienna for a long period of time. Oman, which has not only hosted a number of important meetings, but also played a critical role in getting these talks off the ground in the first place. And then, of course, we say thank you to Turkey, Russia, Kazakhstan, Iraq, and my home country, the United States. I particularly want to thank President Obama. He has been courageous and determined in his pursuit of a diplomatic path. And from the day that he took office, President Obama has been crystal clear that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose a threat to our security and the security of our allies in the region, including Israel. He has been just as clear that the best and most effective way to prevent that threat is through diplomacy. The journey towards a diplomatic solution began years ago. And I can tell you that I've personally been involved for about 4 years, beginning from the time that I was serving in the United States Senate. Others have been on this journey, and some of the others in our team, for even longer than that. But as Foreign Minister Zarif and High Representative Mogherini announced moments ago, today we have reached a critical milestone in that quest. We, our P5+1 EU partners and Iran, have arrived at a consensus on the key parameters of an arrangement that, once implemented, will give the international community confidence that Iran's nuclear program is and will remain exclusively peaceful. And over the coming weeks, with all of the conditions of the 2013 Joint Plan of Action still in effect, from this moment forward, our experts will continue to work hard to build on the parameters that we have arrived at today and finalize a comprehensive deal by the end of June. Now, we have said from the beginning, I think you've heard me say it again and again, that we will not accept just any deal, that we will only accept a good deal. And today I can tell you that the political understanding with details that we have reached is a solid foundation for the good deal that we are seeking. It is the foundation for a deal that will see Iran reduce its stockpile of enriched uranium by 98% for 15 years. It is a deal in which Iran will cut its installed centrifuges by more than 2/3 for 10 years. It is a deal that will increase Iran's breakout time, which was confirmed publicly today to be 2 to 3 months. And that is the time that it would take Iran to speed up its enrichment in order to produce enough fissile material for one potential nuclear weapon, and that will be expanded now under this deal to 1 year from those 2 to 3 months. That is obviously as much as 6 times what it is today and what it has been for the past 3 years. I'd like also to make one more point very, very clear, because it has been misinterpreted and misstated, misrepresented for much of this discussion. There will be no sunset to the deal that we are working to finalize. No sunset, none. The parameters of this agreement will be implemented in phases. Some provisions will be in place for 10 years. Others will be in place for 15 years. Others still will be in place for 25 years. But certain provisions, including many transparency measures, will be in place indefinitely into the future. They will never expire. And the bottom line is that under this arrangement, the international community will have confidence that Iran's nuclear program is exclusively peaceful, providing, of course, that the provisions are adhered to. And if they aren't, we have provisions that empower us to deal with that. Ultimately, the parameters that we have agreed to will do exactly what we set out to do: make certain that all pathways to make enough fissile material for one nuclear weapon have been cut off, including the uranium pathway at Natanz and Fordow, and the plutonium pathway at Iraq, and of course the covert pathway. Now, we, our partners, and Iran have agreed that the only uranium enrichment facility Iran will operate moving forward will be the facility at Natanz. And even that one will undergo dramatic changes. The vast majority of the centrifuges and their infrastructure will be removed. And for at least the next 15 years, the stockpile will remain at 300 kilograms. And any uranium that is enriched at Natanz will be capped at 3.67%, which is a typical level of enrichment for civilian nuclear power, but doesn't even begin to approach the enrichment level necessary for a weapon. We have agreed that the facility at Fordow will halt all uranium enrichment, period. All uranium enrichment, and in fact, there will not even be any fissile material present at the site and no enrichment R&D. Instead, the facility will be converted into a nuclear physics and technology center. We have also agreed that Iran will redesign and rebuild its heavy water reactor at Arak so that it will no longer produce any weapons-grade plutonium. And the United States will be able to sign off, certify the reactor's final redesign. And through international cooperation, it will be transformed into a reactor supporting only peaceful nuclear research and nuclear medicine. And the calandria, as you heard earlier, will be taken out and destroyed. We have agreed that Iran will ship all of its spent fuel from the Arak reactor out of the country for the reactor's lifetime. And Iran has agreed to refrain from building any additional heavy water reactors for the next 15 years at least. At least means still open for beyond that period in the course of the next 3 months. And we have agreed that Iran will face regular and comprehensive inspections, which is the best possible way to detect any attempt to covertly produce a weapon. Not only will inspectors have regular access to all of Iran's declared facilities indefinitely, but they will also be able to monitor the facilities that produce the centrifuges themselves and the uranium that supports the nuclear program, and they will be able to do that for at least 20 years. This critical step will help to guard against diversion of those materials to any clandestine location or plant. In addition, Iran has agreed to allow IAEA to investigate any suspicious site or any allegations of covert nuclear activities anywhere. So these are just a few of the key, and I mean a few, of the key measures that will make up an extraordinarily comprehensive monitoring and transparency regime when and if it is finally signed and completed over the course of the next months. Now, we have been very clear, both publicly and privately. A final agreement will not rely on promises. It will rely on proof. It is important to note that Iran, to date, has honored all of the commitments that it made under the joint plan of action that we agreed to in 2013. And I ask you to think about that against the backdrop of those who predicted that it would fail and not get the job done. And in return for Iraq's future cooperation, we and our international partners will provide relief in phases from the sanctions that have impacted Iran's economy. And if we find at any point that Iran is not complying with this agreement, the sanctions can snap back into place. So together, these parameters outline a reasonable standard that Iran can readily meet, and it is the standard that Iran has now agreed to meet. Throughout history, diplomacy has been necessary to prevent wars and to define international boundaries, to design institutions, and to develop global norms. Simply demanding that Iran capitulate makes a nice soundbite, but it's not a policy. It is not a realistic plan. So the true measure of this understanding is not whether it meets all the desires of one side at the expense of the other. The test is whether or not it will leave the world safer or more secure than it would be without this agreement. And there can be no question that the comprehensive plan that we are moving toward will more than pass that test. This isn't just my assessment. It isn't just the assessment of the United States delegation and our experts. It is the assessment of every one of our P5+1 partners who stood up here a little while ago in front of the flags of their nations. It is the assessment of our negotiating partners, Germany, the UK, China, France, and Russia, and all of our experts who have analyzed every aspect of this issue also join in that assessment. From the beginning, we have negotiated as a team, and we are all agreed that this is the best outcome achievable. No viable alternatives, not one, would be nearly as effective at preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon than, over a period of time, than the parameters providing they get completed and are signed. Our political understanding, arrived at today, opens the door for a long-term resolution to the international community's concerns about Iran's nuclear program. Now, we have no illusions about the fact that we still have a ways to travel before we'll arrive at the destination that we seek. We still have many technical details to work out on both sides, and still some other issues that we acknowledge still have to be resolved. For example, the duration of the UN arms and ballistic missile restrictions on Iran, and the precise timing of and mechanism for the conversion of the Iraq reactor and Fordow site. And of course, once we're able to finalize a comprehensive deal, the process of implementation then remains in front of us as well. But that's a good challenge to have, frankly. Throughout this negotiation, we have made a diligent effort to consult with our allies, our partners, including Israel and the Gulf states, and we have vigorously reaffirmed our enduring commitment to their security. No one should mistake that. And we will continue to stand by that commitment in the years and days ahead. Obviously, we remain deeply concerned about Iran's destabilizing actions in the region, and we remain fully committed to addressing the full slate of issues that we currently have with Iran. But it is because we are so concerned about those issues and about the region's security, precisely because of that concern, that we believe this deal is critical. The status quo with respect to Iran's nuclear program is unacceptable. And certainly we will continue to consult closely in the days ahead with the United States Congress. They and we understand that an Iran that had a nuclear weapon in the context of today's troubles would be even more problematic. I spent almost 30 years in the United States Senate, and I had the privilege and the responsibility of chairing the Foreign Relations Committee when we put tough sanctions in place, when this regime was put in place. And that is the regime that indeed has brought this negotiation about. We are deeply grateful for Congress's support of the diplomatic path to date. We appreciate their patience. There were those agitating to take action earlier. Responsible voices held off, and they helped us to get to this moment, and we appreciate that. We sincerely hope that members will continue to give us the time and the space that we need to fully explain the political agreement that we have reached and to work out the remaining details of a final deal. Before I take a few questions, I just want to take a moment to thank some very important people. The team.
All right, so I want to break away and get some analysis to what we just heard. The Secretary of State, John Kerry, he had worked feverishly over these many months to put this deal together. He says the deal is a good deal.